All right, hi everyone, and welcome to the Studio City Neighborhood Council Homelessness Committee meeting for October. I'm just gonna let in Tiffany. Actually, I think Tiffany's good there. Hi, Tiffany. We'll just quickly take roll for the committee. Jeff Hartwick.
Here.
Marcia Campbell. She's here, she's muted. Oh, I think I need to unmute you. Hang on. Steve, I'm gonna unmute you. Tiffany, I'm gonna unmute you. Still see a few people muted.
You can make them co-host, the committee members and speakers, and then you won't have to ask them to unmute.
Can somebody help me with that so I can just keep the meeting going?
I think only the host in this format
Okay.
can do the promotion to co-host.
All right. There's Josh. Hello, Josh. Let's see. Okay. Apologies if you come up not being able to mute, give me a wave. Okay. Ira Gold, still doing roll call here. Not seeing him. Not seeing Sandy Wooding Kylie. Okay, and with me, we do still have a quorum. Hopefully the others will show up shortly. We don't have any minutes because we did not have a meeting last month, so I'll just move on to the next agenda item, which is a chair update. This month, we don't have any pending legislation, so we decided that we would have a discussion about our role as a committee, how we can be more effective, what we can accomplish for Studio City specifically, and how we can best interact with our government representatives and our law enforcement, and also give them a chance to tell us what we can do to help them. So I do need to take a moment now before we get started on our discussion. It'll be a little bit of an informal meeting. I will make time to allow the public to have comment, as well as the committee will be able to have comment and questions. But just to address agenda item number 4, this would be the time if anyone wants to make public comment on a non-agenda item. If you have comment on a non-agenda item, please raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any hands, we'll keep going. Just want to get into our, oh, okay, Peter Cole.
Hi there. This may be a non-agenda item, but it's related to homeless. For those of you that are not involved in the ad hoc committee for sportsmen, there's one little topic that I'd like to hook into this committee, which is Krikorian asked for, as a public benefit, which we don't agree it's a public benefit, to build a ramp on the north side of the LA River to Coldwater. There's more than a few reasons why a bunch of us don't want it. There is a petition. I just want to let you board members know there's a petition signed by a few hundred stakeholders who do not want that ramp. So when you're thinking about that decision, about all the things that Krikorian asked for and Harvard Westlake asked for, there's some details there that the community has already spoke out against. And Lisa Karajian knew about it in land use. And I think there was a meeting where all these things were, quote, being documented, but I don't know who they're being documented with. But there is a petition signed by over 200 stakeholders that do not want the ramp on the north side of the river for safety reasons for the most part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's jump into our discussion. Just want to preface by saying that we all know that homelessness is not just a local problem, but a national problem. I think there's some estimates that say there are 5 to 7 million units short of the homes that we need for people across the nation. California has, or Los Angeles, we think has around 60,000 homeless individuals right now. The voters passed the HHH bond initiative, which goes to help, build new homes and provide services. But from what I read, even when that's complete in about 3 years, that's going to accomplish 10,000 units. So 10,000 with 60,000 people, you can start to feel like, what are we doing and how are we ever going to solve this? That said, creating housing is probably not something we can do as a Studio City Neighborhood Council Committee. So that might not, and you guys can disagree with me if you want, but from my point of view, that's probably not something that we can solve. But what we can do is sort of look at what's going on in our own community. How can we help the people that are here that need the help, but also protect our stakeholders that live and work, go to school, visit our community. There have been, recently some kind of high profile incidences, some encampments that sort of have been getting a lot of attention that are near schools. So I thought maybe we could discuss with our various officials how they think things are going. What are they doing in what have their outreach efforts have been? And I know some of us already know this, but just to get clear, and what can we do to help in terms of just our reporting, also pushing for legislation, etc. So I want to go ahead and just give Steve, because I know Steve had some specific things that he wanted to talk about. And since I have a heads up about that, I thought I'd just go ahead and call on you first. And then after that, I want to get into some specific topics that are related to Studio City. So Steve, did you want to go ahead and give your comments?
Absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. Just to introduce myself, my name is Steve Ferguson. I serve as Assembly Member Nazarian's District Director for the next 50 or so days. But I wanted to check in as we have recently, certainly, or not recently, it's actually been about a month and a half that we've been working on encampment issues that have been kind of elevated to our office from stakeholders and some members of this committee. So really just wanted to take a moment to give an update on an encampment that is adjacent to Walter Reed Middle School. And give just kind of a timeline of events of where that situation is at, and then also just kind of a strategy, frankly, that helps offices like ours to be able to escalate issues like this and to be able to provide solutions, connect individuals experiencing homelessness with services and outreach efforts that hopefully can stop some of the impacts that occur in certain areas. So first things first on the encampment, I want to thank the members who have reached out to me personally, along with the office as well. This has been a long time discussion, unfortunately, with Caltrans. So Caltrans property usually is adjacent, obviously, to freeways and is usually outlined by fencing. This fencing is rather old, usually, and is easily cut through. And so we have instances where folks have cut through fencing in multiple situations. Once they are on one side of the fence, they are on Caltrans property, and often when they are on the other side of the fence, they are on city property. And as a result, it tends to become a bit of a jurisdictional who's done it and who's responsible for it. And so we've been working in coordination with Council District 2, Tiffany and Council District 2 to address this encampment across from Walter Reed Middle School in particular. The first things first is that many members of the neighborhood filed what's called a CSR request. And I want to just kind of elevate how critically important those CSR requests are. CSR stands for customer service request, and you can fill out a customer service request online for Caltrans at csr.dot.ca.gov. And I'll give that out, and I'm happy to email that around for anybody who didn't get down that quickly. Having said that, we received a Caltrans CSR that was filed on the 29th of August discussing this encampment in this area. As a result, we elevated the importance due to the proximity to a school site. And after hearing reports of impacts and altercations between students and the individual who is living there, the Caltrans was able to connect with LASA and send out in multiple visits to assess the situation and to offer care and to offer services that could help the individual move on or find temporary housing, along with pathways to long-term housing. After 2 of those meetings, it was unsuccessful. Those engagements were unsuccessful. And as a result, our office continued to escalate the importance of addressing this encampment in particular. We did, after the assembly member, frankly, had to make a phone call to the director of Caltrans to escalate this, we're able to secure a cleanup date. And so the encampment at this point will be addressed as of next week on the 18th. So we will have a team out there as well. We are working also in conjunction with CD2 to try and get care teams out there. We're not sure we can get those teams coordinated at the same time. Unfortunately, due to Caltrans quickly responded and said, hey, we can do this in a week after that phone call, as you can imagine. And the city takes about 2 weeks to book their process. So we are doing the best we can to coordinate, and traditionally we do coordinate so that way the problem of an encampment doesn't necessarily just move from one side of the fence to the other, so to speak. But at this point, we have received the date from Caltrans that the 18th will be the date of that cleanup, and we've notified the school and the neighbors certainly who have escalated this issue to us. Anytime there is a Caltrans property that either has litter, graffiti, or an encampment that is being managed, the CSR process is quite literally the process to get it addressed. So usually without us escalating, you will see encampment issues addressed between 3 to 4 weeks. Graffiti and litter issues, depending on where they are at in the maintenance schedule, usually can be addressed within 2 to 3 weeks. We do try to escalate certain cases, again, based off of public feedback, based off of interactions that we're getting, especially if it's related to safety. But that CSR request, what you can always do, whether it's us in office or any assembly office, is to file a CSR request online. There is a CSR number that is given to you after you file that community service request, and then you can send that number to your state official, the office of your state official. Once we have that number, we're better able to work with our legislative liaisons, who each office has, with Caltrans, and escalate cleanups and other items of concern. So just wanted to flag that. That's kind of my brief how to and what you can do to work with us better, and kind of frankly work within the language that allows us to move the state bureaucracy in a way to address some of these issues as expeditiously as possible. if those CSR requests are not filed, again, your state offices can file them for you. Having said that, the problem is not going to be scheduled or slated for to be addressed in any way until that CSR usually is filed. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, and again, appreciate the opportunity to speak, and happy to answer what questions I can with whatever time you have.
I have a question, which is, can this individual move back onto city property and sort of subvert this effort?
So we are trying to plan to do everything to prevent that from occurring. So that's where Tiffany with CD2 is working right now to try and make sure that we have either law enforcement out there or others that can ensure that the encampment just doesn't move down the block or again, back into Caltrans property. There are situations certainly where, the individual will leave, come back within the same day, wait for law enforcement to leave the area or care teams to leave the area. But as a result of that, and we understand that, we tend to book follow-up visits from Caltrans at that time to just make sure on the Caltrans side that's not occurring. So we're working with city partners right now to try and make sure that that doesn't happen. And again, we've received requests, everybody from stakeholders to PD, you name it, to help address this. So we're trying to work as a team to make sure that that doesn't happen. Could it happen? Yes. But again, we're working actively to try and coordinate to make sure it doesn't.
Okay, on this same topic, Richard, I do see your hand, and I'll get right to you. I'd like to let our senior lead officer, Sean Smith, just speak briefly, because I know he's also spent a lot of time over there, and I think it's interesting to know how many people outreach to this one area. So if it's all right, Officer Smith, I'd like to hear your interactions at this one site as well.
I've known of her for a while. She was at a couple of different spots. She's always been real friendly with me. We dealt with her at, like I said, one of the spots was by the river where a fire was lit. We're not sure who lit the fire near the encampments by Bradford Studios. And then I guess she was gone for a little bit. I don't know where she went to. She ended up in the neighborhood off of Sarah Street. I was informed on my day off by a few of the neighbors. And then by the time I got back to work with 2 days, I probably had about 5 or 6 emails, including multiple voice messages about the individual. I made contact with her. Of course, I recognized her. And at the time, a lot of her property was actually blocking the sidewalk. She was issued a citation for blocking the sidewalk, so not being able to let wheelchair go by. There was not 36 inches of space. And I advised her that, that was not a good place to leave, and that the ordinance for being too close to the school was going into effect. She said she was going to leave. Of course, she just repositioned, and then Steve and his friends have been on the conversation, helping out as much as you can, and Tiffany as well. Then I've had, of course, people saying that they've seen sexual acts, drug activities, and all that stuff there. I have surprised her multiple times. I have not seen that stuff. I did see a person that seems like to me that they need some kind of outreach, and, unfortunately the laws are what they are, and she does not meet the criteria of being forced into get mental help that I believe she needs. But I think she totally is in some crisis right now. But she's able to speak her way through some stuff, and is smart enough not to avoid some of that issues. But the neighbors are very terrified. I can tell you that one of her friends, or somebody that wants to be her friend or something like that, I don't know what their exact relationship, did chase away one of the neighbors, and supposedly made a threat. And that's being investigated, but it has brought some problems, of course, to the neighborhood. That area of Sarah Street is just a huge bit of curb that has caused issues with RVs and other things for the last few years. And we just keep getting issues there. And unfortunately, this area has a lot of intersecting of Caltrans, county, city, and which makes it very, very hard sometimes to get everybody in line at the same time, so the stars are aligned and we can all come together and work together. But I can tell you, Steve's office with Mr. Nazarian and CD2 have been real good, and we're trying to coordinate correctly. I'm going to do my best to be out there that day as well. I have a good, her and I have a good dialogue. So I'm hoping that, you know, she'll get the outreach that day, and maybe we could talk her into getting that shelter that she needs, and we won't have to worry about her being on the streets anymore that day.
And if I can just let you know as well, and apologies to interrupt, I will say that last legislative session, the Clean California Initiative was passed into law, which was a funding bill to improve fencing and hardscaping around Caltrans properties. So what we will see over the next 4 or 5 years is this chain link fencing being replaced with harder fencing, frankly, to cut through wrought iron, et cetera. And the assembly member before leaving office has identified a few parcels, including this one, that we are doing our best to move up in the priority level as these funds are deployed and as these sites are improved, so that we don't have recurring issues. There was an encampment there around April, right around the time I first started. So we know this is an area that continues to get traffic and certainly issues. So thank you to Officer Smith and others who are continuing to work in this area. And again, we're going to continue to partner in every way we can to just make sure this is a smooth transition for her, a humane transition for her, and also to get this neighborhood back up and running and people feeling safe.
Richard, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, one question for Steve. Has District 7 Caltrans been more responsive, less responsive, or same as all the other districts of Caltrans?
Great question. So District 7 of Caltrans pretty much covers LA County. And I love that you know that. I would say that their responsiveness has largely correlated to the season. As the summer months happen, we have more encampments that come out into the open, people seeking cooler air, cooler conditions, you name it. And so the problem in many different neighborhoods becomes more visible. As it gets colder, folks tend to go inward and find shelter in different places. So as a result, you have less impacts, less reports. In my experience so far, it's been Caltrans is certainly understaffed. Having said that, they are certainly, I think, less impacted now, but they have been pretty severely impacted. I would say through the month of August and September, there's been some pretty significant delays, and not for a lack of care or not for a lack of want, but really just a very large swath of area to take care of. Obviously, I think the number cited earlier was 60,000 people just in the LA area. So, thinking about that as a county, Caltrans, I think probably has a dozen or so folks who are coordinating these efforts with county agencies and others. So I would say that they are working their best to be as responsive as possible, but there are moments certainly where community priorities and stakeholders continuing to escalate a specific case and it not being addressed fast enough requires the intervention of elected officials to weigh in and to put the appropriate pressure to get the issue elevated and addressed. And in this case, that was certainly the case.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, good evening. I have a couple of questions for Steve. Steve, you've been very helpful. I just want to state that we had an issue over by Whitsett and you were very responsive and that thing was addressed fairly quickly. But I drove by Whitsett today, Whitsett and the freeway, the 101, and there's a gate there. It's usually locked. It's wide open again. And there's an individual that's camping right under the bridge right there, right near a Thirsty Merchant. I think that individual's been there for quite some time. I know there's a restaurant across the street and there's a burrito place there. I spoke to her, her front door was broken. And she said that some homeless individuals had ransacked her restaurant. And she said there's a huge problem there. I mean, there's things ongoing. I think that particular area certainly does need some sturdier fencing to prevent the same individuals from breaking into it. So if you could add that to the to-do list, that would be quite helpful. The second thing is, what are the laws concerning trespassing on Caltrans property? I'm pretty sure that there are state laws that govern that particular issue. So why can't the person over on Sarah Street be cited by the CHP and or arrested for trespassing on state property where they really shouldn't be? Can you answer that question? And then I have one for Officer Smith. Thank you.
Certainly, I can do my best on the CHP answer. I will first start on the Whitsett. First of all, it's nice to meet you in person. I've just received your email, so it's nice to put a face with the name. The Whitsett area in particular is an area that is, as Officer Smith kind of referred to, a jurisdictional nightmare. You have the wash there, which is county property. You have Caltrans property, which is state. And then you also have the city property, which is the immediate sidewalk. So when it comes to improving fencing in that area, I do think that a lot of some of that fencing is county fencing. Having said that, enough of our offices have frankly been managing enough of the let me move 2 feet this way and then it's, so we are currently in the process of working with Council District 2 along with Supervisor Catherine Barger's office to put in place an MOU that will allow county offices to be able to address this and not worry about frankly the jurisdictional hurdles that these kind of imaginary lines create for all of us to address these issues. So it allows us to get county supports out there more effectively and frankly more expeditiously. The assembly member and the supervisor and the council member are ultimately moving a lot of this behind the scenes, but we're hoping that in part will address. But I will drive by tomorrow and see where things are at. And if it's on county property or city property or state property, I will figure it out and we will make sure to get an appropriate call in and a report in to manage that site. When it comes to trespassing laws, yes, there are trespassing laws. But again, CHP is going to be dealing with the same kind of approach I think that many officers do, and not speaking for anybody in particular, but we're not going to be able to arrest or fine our way out of this problem. People are going to continue to kind of cut in and do that until we get, frankly, more creative and we invest resources necessary so that the problem just doesn't keep continuing. Where there are certainly safety issues, and there are certainly encampments where we've encountered significant safety issues where individuals have been assaulted, attacked, you name it. We certainly do have CHP that have been effective partners in getting out there and making sure that they're addressing the problem. But again, it is hard to, frankly, again, with the bandwidth of also CHP, who has quite the trek in the valley area to patrol, to get them out for that without additional coordination. So again, are they cited at times? Yes. Are there hard arrests on these? I would say rarely, unless there are other situations at play. But we do, that's why we try our best, frankly, in those scenarios to not just frankly either move or just kind of bulldoze or clear an encampment. We do our best to partner with county or city services so that, again, we're addressing kind of the core needs and trying to move folks. But I will admit there are folks who have repeat interactions and who don't take advantage of services for one reason or another. And that is causing a great deal of frustration with members of the public, and certainly the agency is trying to address this.
Thank you for that. And real quick, good to see you, Officer Smith. Thank you for what you do. Quick question to you. What, in your opinion, is the best tool to enable the LAPD to really effectively deal with the service resistant who continue to camp on public property? Thank you.
A couple of things that we ran into in a long time, and I think there was some resistance from some social workers about dealing with LAPD about certain stuff, but especially with the senior lead officers, we've known more of the homeless people than any they have for a long time. They know me by first name. They know, where I'm from, along with the other senior lead officers. So we have been key in finding people for them and helping them direct them. And we want them in services. We want that stuff too. So that's a problem. I would love to see a database, not on anybody's illness, of course, not violating HIPAA, but homelessness itself is not a medical condition. And so it was also seeing if they're going to take or not take services, so it would be nice if everybody could share that. So by the way, the person like on Sarah Street, it would be nice to know, hey, by the way, multiple times now she did not want any services. And okay, now it's time to maybe go the enforcement route more than that. And I think that's what Steve is saying. Like for us, the trespassing is a very weak law in the state of California, very weak, meaning it doesn't have much teeth. There's mostly a citation. Court is like 6-7 months away. If you do a hard booking, they're out instantly because it's not a violent crime. So if in related to like any encampments, it would love to, like I said, that database where, hey, by the way, social worker's been out there multiple times. They do not want services. And then maybe we identify, hey, by the way, this person is possibly involved in crimes in the area. It'd be a good time to then coordinate, hey, after all the services are offered, it's time to go in there and maybe make a physical arrest when a cleanup is then done. And then give the person paperwork. Hey, by the way, when you come out, now come back and see the social workers and see if we can get you now into housing and maybe change your attitude about accepting services. And so you're not, you're not out in the street suffering from the elements and stuff like that. I think that would be great for all of us. Like I said, and I'm not interested in anybody's illnesses or stuff that they tell me anyway, because we talk with them. I'll be with them for hours sometimes. So we just talk. And I understand though, I don't want to violate anybody's HIPAA rights for sure. But just to know, like, by the way, like simple things, if we had an understanding of, like I said, homelessness itself is not a HIPAA violation, and whether they're taking services or not is not, and I don't mean mental services or anything like that, but just housing services, could be a simple one to check off. So that would be helpful. And a lot of the senior lead officers throughout the city, because we have meetings all the time together, agree on that, like a little basic thing that would help us all, I think.
Could you
Thank you
just
for that.
clarify who would keep the database? Would that be a law enforcement database?
No, I don't think it should be a law enforcement database. I think it should be basically maybe like a California or even county, something like that, where it'd be more like, because, like Steve's saying, is like, Steve's area, it's LA County is huge, and we have multiple cities within that. North Hollywood borders Burbank. So if the person's not accepting resources in Burbank, then all of a sudden it comes to North Hollywood, it would be basically the same type of thing. And like I said, it would be something that's not intrusive about anything like that. A lot of people that I talk to just don't like to be around other individuals. So they enjoy living like that more than they would in a housing type of situation, because for whatever reason, maybe they're raised that way. I don't know, but it would just be nice to share that simple information. And I don't want LAPD to be in charge of keeping that type of information or anything like that. I think it should be more of a shared database, maybe in California statewide. I could tell you that today we were out I was helping another officer at North Hollywood Park. They have a big issue right now going on, and they have some violence experience with some homelessness, assaulting other homeless people. And so we're out there trying to, get the ones that aren't dangerous away from the other ones. And the majority of the people that we ran into are from out of area and out of state today. So I think this area has done very well housing the North Hollywood. And I consider North Hollywood Studio City because there's all the same, the division. Did very well in housing the ones around here that didn't want the housing. As far as I'm concerned, they did pretty good with it compared to some other areas. But it's when you have the people that told me multiple times they come here from San Diego or from it because we are so we have housing, we have outreach. They can talk to mental health workers out here, and which they don't get where they're from, which is good for the people of Los Angeles because they're very giving and nice people. But it would be nice to know that, by the way, this person doesn't want housing at least. So.
Interesting. Thank you. Marcia.
Oh, that was Jeff's question was more along the lines of my question as well, is that when, and I'm sure everybody on the committee maybe hears this in our community, is that when someone, it's not necessarily a situation where someone needs to be arrested, but as Officer Smith said, they're just going a little bit up to the line, but not crossing that line for other services. What really can be done? Because I think you hear a lot or see a lot of people feeling like nothing's really happening. So knowing what that additional step is and what are the resources for someone, or even how does someone qualify for those that next step when they're just going up to the line but not crossing over it, I think is helpful information for people to know, because sometimes it may look like, nothing may be done. I'm not sure where the situation belongs. Is it an arrest situation? Is it mental health? Is it other services? And so I think people would like to know where that line is and who qualifies and who does not.
I could say this is, if you all remember the Hollywood Bowl parking lot, it's actually an MTA parking lot, but everybody calls it the Hollywood Bowl. We had that huge encampment. I had 22 RVs. I had 40 tents there. Was working with CD4 who just took over. So they ran into a very hard situation the second they took over. So CD2 was helping out still with that. And CD4, we were out there multiple times with outreach workers. Tons of times we received citations for trespassing. We made multiple arrests. We had a attempt murder there. We had multiple rapes and stuff like that happened. So finally, with the sheriffs coming in there was a mass cleanup done. But with the cleanup also, we had more outreach workers. And I think that 9 people took housing that day. So sometimes it's, unless they see something actually is going to happen, they're going to keep in their comfortable zone. And I think, I come from a family of addicts. So like same thing with drug use sometimes, like, hey, they're comfortable doing this until, hey, by the way, now you have your choice, either getting forced into this situation or you pick the rehab you're going to go to. But like, I think sometimes that with some people that are experiencing homeless, and that's just what the situation is, they need that tough love at the end. And then I was surprised at how many people took that housing that day. I was really happy. I know CD4 was real happy about it. But we got tons of people into housing that were very pushed back on it for a while. So, and I think that under that, it is a nightmare right there under Whitsett right there. It's a total nightmare. It's a very dangerous situation to go to as an officer. You go back, you're very far away from your vehicle. You have to take officers with you. So imagine if you do have somebody now that wants to fight with you, getting resources back in there in a situation is very scary sometimes, especially when you're by yourself, you're fighting in the dirt. It's dark underneath the bridge. You can't see. It's not a good situation for anybody. But we've partnered up with the sheriff's department before, and definitely Highway Patrol. They used to have their teams that I used to work with before COVID out here all the time. So, we're willing to work with everybody. I like if we could have a very good working relationship with outreach workers as well. So we share names. Like I said, I don't need to know anything about the HIPAA. I'm going to know probably more than they think I've been dealing with them a long time. I know a lot of symptoms myself, but I would like to, hey, by the way, now we're taking the encampment. Okay, now you're taking the services. I like when we're paired that way, so it works very well, I think. And I can tell you that North Hollywood senior lead officers, Van Nuys, Foothill, we're very ready for that, and we do that on a very, on a big basis, but I don't think it happens enough. So anyway, I would like to see more of it.
Just as a follow-up, who would give you those mental health workers?
County.
With them?
So
Is that a LASA thing?
Well, so county, and county is where health is supposed to come, the health of the county is serviced by the county. And I could tell you that we have a very low number of even like beds available at mental health facilities around here. And, in the state level too, I think people talk about but it's like Steve said, investing the resources. You have to invest the resources, like when there's only a few places that can take them. There's one court, it's downtown. I don't know if you ever want to see a depressing place, go into that court. It's horrible. I think that people that want an eye-opening experience of how it is to deal with people with mental health and ones that violate the law or ones that just need to be ordered into living space, that's it. But there's all of you mental health, there's the closest county facility. It's booked lots of times. Then we have to transport somebody sometimes clear down by the harbor or into Pasadena. And so you're talking about officers and ambulance staff being taken out of service for hours and hours at hand. So we could definitely use more of that. And I don't live in the county, so I'm not telling you how to vote on anything, but if you were to vote on maybe getting more money for that type of thing, it's maybe good to push your elected officials into that type of, it would help a lot.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge Josh Scarcella from CD4. I see you there, and if you want to contribute, just raise your hand and we'll make sure and ask you some questions shortly too. But thank you for being here.
Yeah. Whenever, I'll I see some people have their hands raised. But I'll
Okay.
give my thoughts in a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, Peter Cole.
There it goes. Question, are any of you up on the CARES court that I saw a link to in this agenda? It's a question before I have my next question.
I have some light background on it, but not an incredible amount of depth. I've got basically the legislative analysis and what was passed, but.
Let me ask you a quick question. What's the difference? And I want to read a little something from this that I was perusing while you guys were talking. So what's the difference between this and amending LPS? Because I find in the bill 1338, there's an item that says the client should be fully informed and volunteer for all treatment provided unless danger to self or others or gravely disabled requires temporary or involuntary treatment, blah, blah, blah. So this says to me, it's the same issue where you're going to find, we've got this CARES court where they've spent millions and millions of dollars to set it up and to advise and whatnot. And if the language is exactly the same, where somebody who's a repeat offender is offered services, mental health services, and he can refuse because he can put his clothes on and he can feed himself, but he still likes to, live in the trees or whatever. Tell me how this is different. Thank you.
So one, I will follow up and get, a detailed response and then kick it over to Julie, some specific answers. But what I will say is what I think we are seeing more than anything, we talked about, again, the number earlier, 60,000 people experiencing homelessness just in our area. What you are seeing now are kind of the first steps, measure age, all of them, to really address probably a problem that's a decade and a half that's going to take to address. And so what you are seeing are engagement ladders, whether it's within the court system, that allow for greater flexibility being designed right now by the legislature and by state agencies. You also have additional efforts by counties, local counties, to increase the number of beds based off of the bonds that taxpayers have passed. So again, not all of it makes, I think, sense at this moment or necessarily addresses the problem or solves it overnight. But what I think we're seeing is, again, the formation of infrastructure to address this in the long term. It's going to take some time. But I will get some additional information, specifically how it relates to that. I think also with care courts, I think where there's been kind of greater specificity is, again, granting greater flexibility when that individual is starting to go through criminal proceedings, and being able to put them on a treatment path and then move them back to criminal proceedings if that is not working. So that's kind of the pathway that's being designed. Is it perfect? No, there are plenty of critics, but I think it is a part of an overall effort by multiple agencies at the county and the state level to address these kind of bigger meta infrastructure problems as we're trying to address this issue.
I see you guys' hands, but while we're on this topic, I wanted to just not let this pass, which is, Steve, you mentioned a program called the San Fernando Valley Mental Health Center, which is in coordination with the LAPD. And I wondered if you would mention that, and if Officer Smith, if you know about that or plan to participate.
It may be new for Officer Smith, so I won't put him on the spot too much, but the Assembly member was able to secure in this last state budget, I believe it's $5 million for a partnership with the San Fernando Valley Mental Health Center that will be coordinated through Council District 2. That will basically partner and support LAPD officers in the field with mental health officials and professionals who can go out and who can support these teams. The design of what that looks like and the type of supports that are going to be offered are likely going to be focused in a specific geographic area. At this time, that's where those conversations are. But again, the levels of support, what that support looks like, is being kind of planned out so it can be as effective as possible. And frankly, if it's successful, then it can be replicated in very meaningful ways. So again, getting more boots on the ground to allow officers to be able to do what they need to do in kind of the heavier moments. But again, that we have more of those facilitators of services out there, folks who can identify quickly and move these folks to supports that they need. So this is a pilot program that the Assembly member, again, was able to secure funding for. We've secured funding for five years worth of this program. And so at this point, it's being designed, but hoping that some model or shape or form it should be deployed. We're looking, I believe, at the first quarter of 2023.
Sounds like what you were asking for. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, we have something called the SMART teams that partner up with some mental health care providers, and basically what they do, if we go to a call and somebody wants to basically commit suicide or hurt somebody else, or is that extreme, and then I say extreme, gravely disabled, because a lot of people take that term one way or the other, but gravely disabled, you have to compare it to the rest of the folks experiencing those problems within the area. And so it's a comparison, of what we all maybe that are staying inside a covered house today, or residents, or getting 3 meals a day, think is okay or not. But and I think that what the part of the program is going to do is expand on that, plus give us other resources like, hey, by the way, they didn't meet our criteria, and they're going to follow up with us with what we totally needed, and then have that partnership together. And that's awesome. And I think more stuff like that should come online, because I think that'll be very successful. Just like our SMART team, it was kind of a new thing, and then it spread, and then other cities are starting to take in what LA area has done too. So
Great, thank you. Scott?
Thanks, Julie. I just wanted to back up a little bit to Care Court. It obviously was just signed less than a month ago. The rollout in the first 7 counties, unfortunately, does not include LA County. So we're going to have to wait and see how it works out in those other counties first, and if the funding that's dedicated for that is actually enough, because it's a very cash intense program with all of the support that each individual needs as they go through the court process. And to Sean's point, I've also been asking for a database similar to what he suggested, and I created my own. And I have a Google map of every single homeless encampment in Studio City, Sherman Oaks, and most of North Hollywood. And as you guys were just discussing, I added to my database the one you were talking about, service resistant, and I added the date. It's very simple. I know the outreach workers have this information, and LAHSA has it, and I think Family Housing might have it, CD4, CD2. They know who they get in touch with, and they know who says no. And having a database, so we all know, not violating HIPAA, of course, but these encampments, are they occupied by service resistant people who've been offered service? It would be a great help as far as how these are managed. And I'd be happy to share my map. Thank you.
Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to discuss briefly to answer Peter's question about the care courts. Basically, it only applies to people with psychotic disorders and schizophrenia. A family member or medical person or even a police officer can file a petition under penalty of perjury to get that person into the care court system. Sometimes they are incarcerated, and a care plan will be part of their probation. And if they don't take medication, they don't do this, that, or the other in terms of their care plan, which is determined by a clinician and a judge, then that person can I guess, drop out of diversion and go back to the criminal case. So it's really for schizophrenia, psychotic disorder. And then if I think the court has jurisdiction for about a year, then after that time period, if the person fails out for whatever reason, then they could actually be subject to an LPS conservatorship. So that's a possibility. So that's kind of the general rubric. Our neighborhood council actually supported the care court. So I'm glad that it finally got passed by the legislature. Thanks.
I have a few questions for Officer Smith, not necessarily related, but I found some things interesting. Number one, how many, I know this is just going to be a guess, but or an estimate, how many homeless individuals do you think there are in in Studio City 2, how much time do you and your officers spend out of your day dealing with the unhoused and calls that you get to these locations? What amount of your time? And number 3 would be, is a little off the subject, but I'm also wanting to address this neighbor that we had that was attacked, who had somebody trespassing on their property. So just sort of segueing into that, what can, people do when they have people trespassing? Because I also heard they couldn't be prosecuted because they didn't have a certain no trespassing sign. So first of all, the first thing is just how many people are there and how much of your time and your staff's time do you spend dealing with them, and then going to the trespassing?
We have a lot of people. And I would, a couple, a few hundred, they stay in underneath bridges and up in the hillside. And so North Hollywood, Studio City area is hard to count because we have good hiding places. So like I get to see them when I do hikes and then go underneath bridges and do all that other stuff. We also are kind of the gateway into the city from the red line. So we get a lot of new people coming in that either got off the Greyhound bus or just decided to come up through the red line. So there's a lot there. As far as what I would say, that we're going about close to maybe 35 to 40% of all of our calls for service are dealing with the homeless lately. And the time frame is, if you take one into custody, is 90% chance you're going to go to the hospital, because a lot of them are dealing with medical necessities that they have to go to the hospital for. LAPD does not take somebody and wait in line. We go to the emergency room with people. So you do have to wait in line even at the emergency room, but you're talking about a couple hours there until the doctor signs off on the person, either okay for booking at the jail or okay to be processed with the SMART team to go to mental health facility. So it's a lot of time that we spend these individuals. A lot of them are repeat calls. They're repeat person. We have some that we'll never talk to. They don't have those issues and they seem to take care of themselves. They're very self-contained. And, I'll talk to them, wave to them all the time. No issues, no calls at all. A lot of them are just repeat people that people call on repeatedly. I don't know how to say it anymore, but we see a lot of the same people. For instance, I don't know if yesterday we had an attempt homicide on Lankershim and Hatteras. We had a homeless gentleman that's been in the area for a little over a year. We all know him, meaning the officers will know him. He walked up to a lady. She's walking in on Lankershim and Hatteras, said he was going to kill her, stabbed her in the back of the head with a pair of scissors. And then he later threw a jar of pickles at somebody else. We were able to catch him. He said exactly that he wanted to do that. Of course, he's suffering from some mental illness. No sane person would want to do that or say something like that. He's in custody. The person that committed the assault with a deadly weapon, this person has some issues for sure. The hillside's weird. So lots of times I think for a normal person who doesn't know any better, it looks like it could just be city property or state property. It's hard to tell that it was private property. That's what I mean for the trespassing. So if you don't have signs or clear fencing designated, this is your property, not like a standard front yard of an apartment or a house that, very much has like the curb border and stuff like that. But these hillside houses, a lot of their backside do not have that. So these two individuals were back there. They're confronted by the homeowner. Some type of words were exchanged that happened. And then the homeowner was hit with a metal pole multiple times, collapsing his lung and breaking his scapula, and caused some serious issues. The person fled. We are lucky that there was decent enough video to make out what the individual mostly looked like. We spent a lot of resources trying to find it. And then good Scott over there on his trusty bicycle located the individual not too far from the crime scene, called me, and we were able to coordinate with our helicopters and everybody else and take the person to custody without incident. The person confessed to the crime and is looking at a heavy prison sentence.
And there was a second person there too. Is that person apprehended or no?
The person's not wanted at this time. because of the trespass. Yeah, I was trespassing, but there's no signs there, so it's not prosecutable. So you, like I said, if you have a property, that's how I described, making sure that it's clearly designated that it's no trespassing at certain points. Otherwise, like no court is going to hold the person responsible for not knowing that they're trespassing, and that's exactly what that is. So that person has that. We know the person. They have a long criminal rap sheet, those two, but where they normally camp is next to two individuals that never have a problem. One of them actually has a job locally. So it's just, they're mixed in between with people that are just trying to make it, or just, want whatever, or I don't know if the person refuses outreach, but they usually camp right next, before they got to the person's property, they usually camp right next to a place where we never have any issues. So.
Interesting. All right, are there any other questions right now? Josh, did you want to?
Yeah. I mean, I thanks for everyone for joining, and thanks for inviting me. It's been a good conversation, and it's been, Steve, thanks for sharing like the state's perspective on these things. And I see Tiffany's here from LA Family Housing, who does a lot of great work, in the service area too. And Sean, thanks for joining. And I know like we ran into each other out there, like at Fruitland. That was like my first week when I started, when there was an encampment there. So like, I know, the people out in the community. So, it's appreciative. I would just say, we are continuing to try to just coordinate as much outreach as possible. And, we're working, with LA Family Housing, with NoHo Home Alliance, who we know does a drop-in center on Moore Park and Rhodes each Tuesday, just trying to reach the individuals who are experiencing homelessness in Studio City. From the point in time count, which came out, the results came out last month, there's 124 people that were experiencing homelessness in Studio City as of, the count in February 2022. That number could have changed. There's been also some reports about some inaccurate reporting from that, but we like to believe that it's fairly accurate, with some room for error. We find most of the people in Studio City who are living along the river and in some of these more, secluded areas, like Steve was saying, and Officer Smith were saying, like people living along Caltrans or county property, people living along the Greenway, which is part of RAP. We've had some issues down there, but also some success stories of getting people indoors. Right now, we are in our district, we have a very limited number of shelter beds. The Project Room Key program, which was enacted during COVID, where we took hotel rooms and created shelter spaces out of those, is winding down. So our site is demobilizing, meaning people there's no more intakes at that location. And we had at the beginning of the year some openings there, which allowed us to move some people who were interested from the valley into that location. They're now, the people who are still there have vouchers and are working on getting into permanent housing or other interim sites that they can continue to live at while they're searching for permanent housing. But we are hopeful that we'll have some more interim housing sites that open up in the near future. And hopefully by the next meeting that you all have, we can update you on that. But some things are still in the works. But when we get that, we hope that will allow more people who are living in this area to get indoors. And I will also say we received some state money to focus our attention on the river from all the way down to Griffith Park, Los Feliz, Atwater Village area, through our district to the 405. We are bringing on some case management from PATH and a program manager specifically dedicated to a river project. And they're also going to have some resources that will be able to connect people with permanent housing. And we're hopefully going to be targeting about 60 individuals living along the river in this area, including people living along the river in Studio City. And we're hoping that this will allow us to bring people indoors and ideally, if possible, directly into permanent housing, skipping interim. Everyone has a different solution that's going to fit their needs, and so we can't really predict, what the path for everybody, but with the existing services that are being provided by LA Family Housing, NoHo Home, and LASA, plus PATH bringing on these resources, we're hoping for some success stories in Studio City along the river. Sorry, there's a lot of updates that I just tried to cram in there. Happy to take questions and have a conversation. So.
No, that's all good. I don't see any hands raised. Oh, Scott,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I have a question for Josh. Part of the LA River is the boundary between CD4 and CD2 in Studio City. The money you just mentioned from the state for doing outreach for the homeless people living along the river, are you going to be able to include the north bank of the river that is in CD2, or are you only south bank?
Right now, we are focusing on our portion of the district, and that's just because it was our district that secured the funding. As we staff up with PATH, our hope is to collaborate with the neighboring council districts, and there are some opportunities for additional funding from nonprofits and other government entities that are larger than our cities. So there is hopes that we can kind of target the area. And right now we're also not really targeting on the Wash, which is the, area that juts north. We're trying to keep it limited, but we're having a conversation with we're with PATH, LA Family Housing, NoHo Home tomorrow to discuss this more. And, we'll continue to provide updates. We're hoping that we can expand it, not just to both sides of the river, but potentially, further west in the valley, and then, potentially targeting the Wash. But I can't make any guarantees. And to be honest, those conversations are happening a little bit above my head. So I don't have all the most up-to-date information on that, but I do know when I discuss it with my fellow staff members, it is something we're very interested in.
And just one more question. As far as the people you encounter versus the new beds that you're looking to secure, do you have like an estimate, a guesstimate of how many people you have that are actually seriously waiting for a bed to open up versus people that you're still in the process of convincing to try to take shelter? Is there a ratio, a guess? We're not asking for names and birth dates. And
yeah, no, I know. Yeah. And so just this kind of gives a good opportunity to talk about our office, myself and our liaison who just started. We do outreach ourselves. We try to partner our outreach with actual service providers like NoHo Home. So we have an understanding of the community experiencing homelessness ourselves. So when we do outreach, that's when we're able to really learn these details. I think just along the river, we're talking about probably about 20 people from the 101 to Coldwater Canyon, who at least I would say are probably around there, and I think I would say are interested. But I can't make those referrals myself, and that would have to be done by either LA Family Housing or NoHo Home. So I don't know for sure where the referrals have been made, but I'm hoping, as we focus more of our attention on here, that we'll be able to, get the people the help that they need. I don't really, there are people who I think we do run into who, seem kind of content or seem like they're in there. They have a routine that, where they say, oh no, I don't need help. But I do think for the most part, people say they're interested. People want to go indoors. It's sometimes people are ready to go like that. Sometimes people need a little bit more hand-holding. Everyone's different. So I would say about 20 people living along the river, but that's just kind of a guesstimate. I can't really, I don't have any behind my head. I can't really I can't, I don't have like an exact number or anything like that. I see Jeff has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, Josh. Good evening. I just had a question about, I heard rumors of a possible county mental health drop-in center in North Hollywood that would kind of service the CD2 area. Have you heard anything about that, or if the county even is planning to do that? That's all I have. Thanks.
I haven't heard anything myself. It's in North Hollywood, you're saying? Okay, yeah, but I can reach out to our partners at Catherine Parker's office and Paul Krikorian's office to see if there's any confirmation on that. I mean, obviously that would be very interesting to us. And you know, I know we're having conversations with DMH and also some state government about enhancing mental health services as well in our district. So, I know, unfortunately, I don't know exactly everything that's going on though in the neighboring council districts, but it's thanks for bringing it to my attention.
Tiffany.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Tiffany Franklin. I am the Director of Regional Coordination for SPA 2 at LA Family Housing. A few things. I just wanted to offer myself as a contact, since I do work for the lead agency and homeless service provider, or for homeless, I apologize, it's been a very long day, for homeless services. So again, my name is Tiffany Franklin.
How do we get in touch with you, Tiffany?
You can reach me, the best way is probably via email, and my email address is tfranklin, FRANKLIN, at lafh.org. So that's short for LA Family Housing, lafh.org. And so I just wanted to say that we do have a lot of the answers to your questions that you're asking. I apologize, kind of like Josh, I don't have all of it at my fingertips. I can tell you that we were part of the 100-day challenge for the riverbed, and that we did engage all of the participants who were on the CD2 side. Last I knew, we were able to move most of them indoors, and some of them moved out. But as everyone knows, they move, right? So, I mean, we could have cleared that place a week ago, and then 2 weeks or next week, as Officer Smith knows, they're occupying it again. So it's really just a constant challenge of engaging them, catching them at the right time when they're willing to go indoors. And then also, like you guys have stated before, we do have a limited number of crisis beds, a limited number of interim housing beds. And in LA County, we do have a shortage of 500,000 units. And I would just like to offer also that my department, I can have my staff do a presentation on the outreach that's taking place in SPA 2, and more specifically, Studio City. Again, like I said, I didn't really come prepared to speak on numbers. So I don't have all of your guys' numbers at hand, but I believe someone said 124. And if I remember correctly, we did a meeting earlier, and that seems to be pretty accurate, somewhere around that number. But again, more than willing to do a presentation for you guys on specific numbers and the outreach efforts that are happening in Studio City. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take you up on that. I'll get in touch. So, all right. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I really appreciate you guys coming. I wanted to just, with our three main guests here, just recap very quickly and make sure, because my goal here is, besides informational, which there's been some fantastic information coming through, tell us what you'd like us to do. What can we do to assist you? We appreciate you so much. Clearly, you're all great at your jobs. You're working really hard. It's a horrible problem to solve, seemingly impossible because of many reasons. So just to recap, let us know what you'd like to get from us in the future? And I'll start with you, Officer Smith.
You know, I consider myself very fortunate. I have a great partnership with a lot of you out there, and then, you know, people come and go from the different agencies, but as soon as somebody jumps in, they really jump in and get to know each other. The community themselves in Studio City is pretty awesome. I enjoy a very good relationship with everybody, but you know, you have people like Scott went out there. I mean, he sees a problem on the news, and he does he's crazy. He rides his bike everywhere, that guy. But you know, he's out there riding. He recognizes the person because he cares about his community, and he calls me. That's awesome. And I think that knowing, and I think Steve hit it on this, knowing exactly who to contact, like filling out that, I didn't know about that until I learned that from him. That's awesome. Knowing what paperwork to fill out and who to direct some of your questions to is awesome. I think that when it comes to homelessness, of course, Department of Mental Health is hugely involved, and maybe, you know, like I said, maybe knowing like what their budget is and what their plan is, maybe to expand stuff would be good. And so the community would know, and maybe the community knows, hey, by the way, this is our limitations of what we can do. And if somebody refuses, this is where we're at. And that's where maybe sometimes laws need to be changed a little bit. And that's when you would talk to the people that you elect at, you know, your state and county level. And I would just, you know, keep that in mind. If somebody basically says no, and they're not meet that criteria, they don't qualify for certain help. And so, you know, just be mindful of the laws and just, you know, educate yourself a little bit. And then instead of talking maybe about some meaningless stuff on TV or something like that with your friends and neighbor, talk a little bit about that and spread a little education around, and be very helpful.
All right. Thank you. Steve.
Thank you. First of all, to echo Officer Smith a little bit, this really is a collaborative effort, and it really is a team effort. And I joined the Assembly members government side in March, and since then have really truly seen, you know, everybody from stakeholders to our service providers to our senior leads, frankly, all get engaged, all really very committed to doing this the best we can. Nobody wants to have a viral moment. Nobody wants to handle these situations poorly. But what you will see, as you saw Josh talk about a little bit, is we are kind of in a little bit of a Goldilocks phase of how do we approach this? How do we provide the most effective interventions possible and supports possible? This one's too hot, this one's too cold. You're seeing different council districts, you're seeing different districts across the state try different things. So certainly you'll see CD2 and the San Fernando Valley Mental Health Partnership potentially take root, but you're also seeing good innovation happening. Why? Because again, stakeholders are continuing to escalate areas of concern like the wash at Whitsett. And not just that, the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council right next door was escalating issues along the wash as well. That led to greater collaboration between the state office, the county office, and the city office. And now we have this MOU, again, potentially breaking down these more bureaucratic barriers that just don't make sense. So one, escalate, continue to escalate where you can to field reps, field deputies, anybody from these legislative offices. It's important. Schedule quarterly meetings with senior constituent services roles like myself, district directors, things like that, that can help you kind of get a more meta analysis as certain areas are more impacted than others. We have 76 freeway entrances and exits in our district alone. Those district lines are all changing. Having said that, I know Caltrans very well and better than many of my colleagues, so who don't represent as many freeway exits and entrances and don't manage those requests. So again, getting your district directors involved as well, very helpful. And CSR forms, again, those links, sharing them actively, I cannot tell you how much it helps. And when people take forever, and let's say a CSR was filed and Caltrans takes forever, I can see the date that was filed. And that allows me to expedite it. That allows me to get supports to you all much faster. So thank you.
Thank you. Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, you know, talk about like the granular level of what you can do to bring services. And I mean, it's just to people to, you know, if you see someone who, you know, is in a spot that they shouldn't be, but you want to help them, you want to I forget if it was Officer Smith or Steve who said it earlier, but like, you know, we can move people out from the areas they're not supposed to be, but we're just going to keep going back and forth until, you know, we get them the services they need. And sometimes, like Steve just said, like, that's a Goldilocks situation. That's figuring out exactly what they need. But I will say, like, the place to start is LAHSA LA Hop. Julie, have you distributed that link to the committee? Or I'm sure some of you are very aware of that and don't need me to tell you about what it is, but basically it's just where you put in an outreach request, you put in the location, you put in the name of the person if you have that, you put in the description, where they are. Ideally, it's someone who's kind of in a location that is consistent there, because then we can get, then LA Family Housing or LAHSA can get out there, you know, in the next, you know, within a matter of time. So, but I would say when you fill out the LA Hop, which if you Google LAHSA LA Hop, you'll find it, LAHOP. Send me or one of my colleagues, George, just a note with that LA Hop reference number. And, you know, we collaborate with LA Family Housing and we can, you know, work with them just to get some, you know, generic information about the outreach efforts that are happening out there. We can go out ourselves, meet the person, and just like it's a collaborative effort, respecting the privacy of the individual, but also trying to bring out the right resources that the person needs. And then also like informing, you know, like Steve was saying, like how our council office decides to, you know, supplement or, you know, bring on additional services that we think, you know, might not be, you know, or pilot things that might not be in existence currently. So that's something that could really help. You know, if there's ever an emergency or a safety concern, that's the 911. That's time to call 911. That's, you know, Officer Smith's expertise. But yeah, I would say LA Hop is just a really good reference. And it helps us start the process of getting the person the help they need. And, you know, what path that takes is unpredictable sometimes, but it's a good starting point, and sharing it with us will just add more people to the conversation. Maybe Tiffany is thinking just we don't always need more people to the conversation, but it's helpful just to kind of communicate and have our office, I think, be aware of where the people are. And then also this is unrelated, but also sometimes is related, unfortunately. If you have any, you know, what our office can help coordinate sanitation efforts as well. If there is, you know, trash or someone's having issues with ADA compliance, like not allowing that 36 inches, you know, we can get involved, work with the individual. You know, we have a very hands-on approach when it comes to any sort of sanitation efforts involving people experiencing homelessness. We like to be out there. We like to talk with the people, try to get them to collaborate and be prepared to move items downsize if the items are starting to get, you know, take too much of a footprint. But we try to do it always in collaboration with the individual, and also we try to do it, you know, in collaboration with any sort of services that organizations like LAFH, LAHSA, or NoHo Home can bring as well. So I mean, those are the things that come to mind. There's obviously all sorts of very specific situations that I'm not going to get into right now, but you know, if there is just a question you have, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to George, who's your field deputy for Studio City. Yeah, that's just the granular type of thing we can provide, and then, you know, that's going to inform some of the bigger things that happen, hopefully, from the council or the collaborations with county, state, LAPD, what have you.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. Well, I just thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for coming tonight. It's been a really productive evening. I've got a million notes. I'll rewatch it. I think there's a lot of things that we can do. And there's a lot of outreach that we can continue to do, especially with our website and with our meetings and various, you know, outreach situations that we have. And now, you know, we have a better understanding of of how to serve you as you try to serve us as well. So I guess, let me look at the agenda. But if you guys need to sign off, I know that you've put in a long day and we couldn't appreciate you more. Steve, did you want to say something?
Just briefly, so the assembly member is leaving office November 30th. And so it's been obviously a great honor and privilege to represent Studio City. It's a magnificent community. Love Studio City. But having said that, this conversation is really important to continue. And so as we are leaving office, I will make email contact between Julie and the new district director for the area, just so that way there's some continuity there. And we'll make sure to try and make sure all those handoffs are done in advance, and as well with all of our senior leads, et cetera. So that way, again, we're not leaving you hanging, and this work can continue, and you can continue to expedite and elevate cases as necessary. But it's our privilege to serve, and thank you on behalf of the assembly member for the time tonight.
Thank you. Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. So just to complete our meeting, we need to move on to agenda item number 11, which is discussion regarding potential topics for future meetings. Does anybody have anything they would like to say about that? No. Okay.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Jeff can go first.
Thanks. I think we need to address our website, particularly the committee portion of it. I think we need to post the fabulous flyer, some basic information for stakeholders. What Josh mentioned about LA HOP, maybe that just basic information, so stakeholders can easily reference kind of basic questions, the reports to Caltrans and that sort of thing. So I think it would be something that we should make a priority of listing that, not to put our president on the spot or anything, and also maybe post our CISs that we passed to show that the community that we've actually got stuff done and we've tried to effectuate influence on our council members and our state reps. So that's all. Thanks.
Agreed, because we have passed a lot of legislation, or we've supported a lot of legislation. We'll see where it goes, but I agree. There's so much information that was given to us tonight that Luis left behind, and like maps of jurisdictions for people of how to report things, what to do, who to call. That information is out there, but we need to get it up and make it useful. Scott?
Well, Jeff's exactly right. And no, that does not put me on the spot. That's something I'm trying really hard to get going. Each committee has their own committee page. And on that page, you can load it up with all kinds of resources and information. And it would take a little bit of work to start with Luis's sort of guidance, and then add simple links like they were just talking about, the Caltrans, the way to report the Caltrans, the loss of HOP. It would also be very helpful, and this may require, it's going to require effort and time, but like for the encampment on Sarah and Beck, a lot of people want to know, is it reported? Has anyone reported this? And we can log the hotspots in our area and say, reported, a date, who knows about it, if it's CD2, if it's CD4, if it's Caltrans, if it's county, just so people know that someone's called it in and help is on the way someday. And then that gives us the ability to follow up. And also there's a new tab on our webpage that Brandon and I got going, and Brandon just populated it with the motions we passed for, I think, August. So maybe with the new youth board member and youth committee, we can put them to work. Each committee can also assign a member to get the credentials to start working on their page. It's just going to take time. And I know we're all busy and months go by, but we do have that ability to do it. So you can talk to me offline If you want to assign anyone from your committee, maybe assign Jeff or Ira to start populating the committee with these links, and we'll go from there. And Ira apologizes, he had to leave.
Okay.
So he was here, but then he had to go.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say for now.
All right. Well, you guys reach out to me with what you would like to do or what you're able to do. And I will start pulling the information that we had from Louise and also write up some of the things that we got tonight so that, and I'll run it by you obviously before we start posting anything. But I think we're clear about, you know, what we can put up and how at least we can get stuff public in terms of what we're doing and information, useful information for people. I wish we could solve enforcement, but that's the one area of the situation that I'm not sure how much control we're going to have, except that we just continue to report. We continue the communication. So, all right, anybody else? All right, I just made my,
I just want to say, thanks, Julie. You had a really great meeting tonight. I just wanted to put that shout out. It was very beneficial. It was
Thanks.
great getting all the local reps in and Officer Smith, get everyone's take and suggestions. I thought it was a great meeting. Thanks.
thank you.
I agree. It was really informative. This was it was a lot of helpful information. And I also posted, I don't know how helpful it's going to be moving forward, but to Nextdoor, just to let people know about the meeting, because there's a lot, as we know, that goes on that app, but to get people talking and to invite them and to be more solution oriented and invite them into the conversation as well.
I actually saw that post. Yeah, good. So yeah, I think it's good to get the word out. Even if nobody comes, they know it's happening, right? I think it's great. Okay, well, with that, then I guess we shall adjourn the meeting at 8:28 p.m. All right. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night. Thank you. Great job. Great meeting. Thank you.